guys, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if it is your first time here. My name is Jess. I upload videos a couple of times a week, mostly book related content with a little bit of travel and lifestyle sprinkled in for good measure. And for today's video, I had seen a couple of booktubers doing reaction videos to some of their earlier uploads, in particular looking at book hauls and then saying whether they'd actually ever read the books that they hauled, and I really wanted to do one of those. So as I was scrolling through some of my earlier videos, I came across one that almost 4 years ago to the day I uploaded, talking about series that I wanted to finish, and I thought that that would be a really good one because I am the worst at finishing series, especially if books haven't yet been released. If I can binge read a series, normally I will, but yeah, I thought they would be really interesting to go back because it's such a long time, as well, 4 years, and see how many of the series that I talk about in the video I have actually successfully managed to finish. So that's what we're going to do. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. I am fully expecting to just cringe all the way through because I feel like, especially my very early videos, which this would have been 4 years ago, would have been an early video, I was very stiff and staccato and not really relaxed, and I didn't really move or use my hands or anything, and also I had blonde hair, so that's where we're at. Yeah, so if that sounds like it would be of interest, then let's jump in. Okay, I'm going to put my headphones in so that we don't get the double sound. And welcome to today's video. Today I thought that I would talk to you really quickly about series which I have not yet finished, but which I do. Side note, it's really interesting to me that I talk, I had a problem with my wisdom teeth for about 6 years. The dentist wouldn't take my wisdom teeth out, and I just spent every single day in pain. I've had them out now, but I talk like this and you can tell that my mouth is really sore, but that was my whole life. I spent my whole life in pain. Do you plan on finishing? So cringy. I was going through looking
back at some cases, kind of looking at the different books, and it does seem like the majority of them are fantasy based, which I think might have something to do with the fact that a lot of fantasy stories tend to do more than one book to kind of tell the whole thing, whereas a lot of other genres can be more standalone or companion books.
The obvious,
but there is a little bit of variety in here, so let's just jump straight in. The first book is, or the first series should I say, is a very popular one, and that is The Mortal Instruments by Cassandra Clare. This is book 4, City of Fallen Angels. I own up to book 4, although I haven't read this one yet. I think there are 6 books in the series.
So only this year have I actually finished the Mortal Instruments series. It has taken me 4 years to read those books, and now I am on to the Infernal Devices. It took me a long time, even though they're super easy to read, and I really connected and clicked with Cassandra Clare's writing style, and I thought that they were such fun reads. It just took me a really long time, and I think part of that is that I got a little bit bored of Clary and Jace's will they won't they relationship, simply because I'm not the target audience, I think. And I've said this countless times, that I really like the stories and they're really fun and I devour them, but because I'm not the target audience, some of that angst, that romantic angst, just had me rolling my eyes and wore a little bit thin. Yeah, so it didn't really draw me in. But this year, out of the gate, this year I have finished that series, so that is good.
6 books plus some novellas, plus The Infernal Devices, which is a separate series but kind of loosely connected to this. If you're not familiar with The Mortal Instruments, it tells the story of our protagonist Clary, and basically within the world is as it is, but there are shadow hunters and there are demons, and mere mortals are protected from these demons and these bad things by the shadow hunters who keep them in check and hunt them, and you've got vampires and werewolves and all kinds. And our protagonist is Clary. It's really hard to put into a brief synopsis all that happens in these books. They are not the most complex pieces of fiction. I find them a really easy read. I like to pick one up every now and then, and I do enjoy them, and I've heard a lot of good things about The Infernal Devices and how much better that series is than this one, but because I am a stickler, I'm kind of ploughing my way through this series before I pick up the next one.
Chronologically read stuff.
So yes, this is definitely a series that I want to finish, at some point. Okay, next up is a series of books known as The Cousins' War, written by Philippa Gregory. This is a historical fiction series set around the time of the War of the Roses in the 1400s, and it basically follows a whole host of different historical figures who were present, and you get the story from both sides. So occasionally books are told from the point of view of the Lancastrians and occasionally from the Yorkists. I really enjoy Philippa Gregory books. I don't think I've talked about her a lot on this channel. She's a really good historical writer. I have read most of the stuff that she has done, and again, I find the books to be quite complex.
That's interesting to me, because one of the benefits that I have found since joining BookTube and joining the book community online as a whole is that my sphere of reading has been expanded hugely, and I would not say now that I find Philippa Gregory's books to be complex, like not at all. But this is a series that I have not finished, and I don't think I've read a Philippa Gregory book in easily 4 or 5 years. Definitely not since putting this book up. This video up, I wouldn't have said. I do own Tidelands, but I have not finished this series. I don't even own those books in order to finish the series. Definitely haven't.
So I tend to just pick one up every now and then. The next book in the series, which I don't have the last two.
Still don't have the last two.
The White Princess is the next one. And yeah, she's just a really good writer. I like that she bases a lot of the storyline in fact and then just kind of builds a fiction narrative around it. And I love reading, I know it makes me sound so nerdy, but I love reading the historical note at the end and kind of correlating that with the way that she has chosen to write the story.
Just own that nerdiness.
If you like historical fiction, then I would highly recommend you take a look at this series. The next one is a little bit of a cheat, because I have read the entire series of this book, but I only own the first 3 because they were my
I know what this one is.
Copies. But again, this is an author that I don't think I've talked about a lot on the channel, and that is The Pendragon Cycle by Stephen Lorehead.
This is a series that I think about all the time. It was such a great series when I read it, and I looked into getting the remaining books from the 3 that I owned, but they changed the covers, and so I wanted to invest in the new covers, and I just don't ever seem to make that purchase, like, yes, I'm going to make that investment and rebuy the whole series in the new covers. But it means that I still haven't reread the series, but I think about doing it all the time. I think about how much I loved the series, what an impact it made on me. It's a series that James has also read, my husband, and we talk about a lot. I love Stephen Lorehead as an author. I think he is super underrated in the book community. But yeah, I still haven't purchased or reread all the books in the series, but it is 100% something that I think about doing. Like, probably once every couple of weeks I think to myself, oh, you'd really like to read Stephen Lorehead's books again. I don't know why I haven't done it. I don't know why.
I absolutely adore Stephen Lorehead's books. He is one of my all-time favourite authors. He writes fiction books, but he's just a really
know why I talk
beautiful
so slowly
and lyrical author, and pretty much anything that he has written I have adored. So The Pendragon Cycle is a fantasy retelling based on the legend of Arthur, but the first 2 books kind of go to before the arrival of Arthur, and then the following books are after Arthur has kind of risen into power. There are 5 books in the series in total, and I can't praise Stephen Lorehead's writing enough. It's a really intriguing and fascinating take on the legend of Arthur, and do you know, it was the kind of book that when I finished reading it I was quite heartbroken that I'd finished it, and also I really kind of wished that it was true. I wished that the version of events that Stephen Lorehead had created was the actual legend of Arthur, because it is just completely...
That is the conversation that James and I have all the time, that we really wish that Stephen Lorehead's take on Arthur was true. And then also Stephen Lorehead has written a series about Robin Hood, and he bases it in Wales rather than Nottingham. And again, I've read and loved that series, wept at the end of it, and then just thought I really wish that this was actual fact. And sometimes I'll be having a conversation with someone about something to do with the Arthurian period or with Robin Hood, and I have to remind myself not to reference Stephen Lorehead's version as fact, because his writing is just so believable, so good. His characters are rich and diverse and fascinating and just get right under your skin. Honestly, cannot praise him enough. this 4-year-old Jess is 100% correct. He is fantastic, and all it makes me want to do is reread that series now so badly.
There is also a standalone book called Avalon, which is kind of an informal 6th book to the series, but tells the story of before The Legend of Arthur begins. But again, if you're interested in fantasy, then I cannot recommend him enough. He is definitely one of my all-time favourite authors. Then next up we have another very well known and very popular series, and that is The Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. I love these books. I was a huge fan of these books way before the TV series came out. So this is A Dance with Dragons, Dreams and Dust.
So here is a series that I definitely have not finished, and to the point where I started a reread of them, and I still haven't. I didn't even complete my reread, and then I didn't complete the part 2 of A Dance with Dragons book, which is the only book that I haven't read yet, of the ones that have been released. And I love this series, and I will play the video and you can hear me gush about it back then as well, but I still love this series. It's one of my favourites. I read it many years ago when it was first released. I think for me the biggest bugbear that I have at the moment is that it isn't completed, and I don't know if it's going to be completed. And obviously everyone kind of went mad with the TV series, and it was like, oh, this happens and this happens, and it's so far removed from the books, and so I got turned off a little bit to the series in general. It's definitely one that I want to finish, but I kind of feel like now at this point I'd rather wait and see if any more books are released and how it's going to be concluded, because obviously the author George R.R. Martin is unwell, and so there is some question over whether he's going to be able to finish writing the final books and complete the series, and whether it becomes like a Robert Jordan with Brandon Sanderson having to finish the Wheel of Time books. I don't know. We'll have to see. So I almost feel like there are so many other books that I want to read, and although I love the Game of Thrones books, whether I just wait and see, let them be concluded, let them be released, let it finish, and then just binge read the whole thing again. I really feel like that may be kind of the wisest way to do it. I say that, but then probably next week I'll be like, oh, I've been inspired to pick up Game of Thrones again. I wonder why.
I also have A Dance with Dragons After the Feast. These are the 5th books in the series, and as you can see they are absolutely massive, as are all of the books that George Martin writes. The reason that I haven't got round to these is pretty much because I read these before I had children, and each time a new book came out I would go back and I would reread the whole series, because if you've read these you'll know that they are entirely character driven, and each chapter is from a different perspective of a different character, and the storyline is incredibly complex. So many different things happen, and it's just really hard to pick up a book, and I'm a little bit intimidated now. It's been so long since I read the last one that I just don't know how I'm going to get back into the series without rereading them, and then the idea of committing all of that time to rereading them, it's not like when I was childless and I could just sit for hours and race through these books. I don't have as much time to read anymore, so I do want to pick them up. I'm very interested to know where the story is going, but I am still undecided about exactly how I'm going to do it, whether I will reread them all or whether I'll just jump in and hope for the best. Obviously this is a fantasy series, and the thing that I really like about George R.R. Martin, apart from the fact that his books are incredibly character driven, which I love, is the fact that he's a really brutal author, and you just have no idea what is going to happen. You kind of think, I remember reading the first books and thinking, yep, got this, got who the heroes are going to be, got who the bad guys are going to be, got it, and then he just kills off your main characters all of the time, and you just left like completely mind blown and thinking, what on earth are you even doing? But yeah, I know that some people don't get on with these books, but I love them, and definitely will be picking these up at some point.
Just as another interesting aside, that definitely seems to be one of the things that I love. As a reader, I love my morally grey characters. I love books which are predominantly character driven over being plot driven, and I like authors who are not afraid to confront the weaknesses of human beings. So the fact that life isn't fair, and the fact that some of your favourite characters will die, and the fact that some of your favourite characters will have flaws. You know, they will act up, they'll be jealous, they'll be angry, They will have a good side and a bad side and all the kind of grey areas in between, and that is something that I've definitely learnt more about myself in the last 4 years since being on BookTube, that they are the stories that resonate and stick with me, and you get that a lot in fantasy. But yeah, I love that. It's definitely what draws me into a book far more than something that's really fast-paced and plot-driven.
And then another fantasy series is The Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini. This is the story of Eragon.
So I started my reread of these books this year. I'm pretty sure I'm going to talk about wanting these new covers, and I got the new covers, and then I didn't do anything about it. And then I started my reread this year, and I think I've read Eragon, and that's it. I haven't read any of the others, and it's the final 2 books, I'm pretty sure, in this quartet. It's the final 2 books that I need to read. So yeah, I reread Eragon, really enjoyed it, fully intended to pick up the rest and just binge read them, and I just haven't.
It's a young adult fantasy quest series about a young boy called Eragon who finds, he's out hunting one day and he finds a blue stone which turns out to be a dragon egg. That egg hatches and he becomes the first dragon rider in so many years, and then gets thrown onto this quest to overthrow the evil king and save the kingdom. I really like these books. It's been about 10 years probably since I read them, and I've read the first 2, so I haven't read the last 2, which are Brysinger and Inheritance, and I saw them when I was out for my anniversary in Waterstones, and they've got some gorgeous new covers, and because they're such an easy read, I think it's just laziness that means I haven't read them yet.
That makes me laugh because it probably is laziness. It's probably a mixture of laziness and the fact that I have so many other books that I really want to read, and I'm a bit of a stickler, I think I've already said this, I'm a bit of a stickler for reading things in order, but also I really like rereading books if I'm going to jump back into a series that I've not read for a while, because I dislike that kind of initial period where you're not quite sure what's going on and you've got to kind of get back into who everyone is and what's gone before, so I always just preferred to reread and then just binge read, but being, you know, there's so many books that I want to read, and time is so limited that I just don't have the same amount of time to do that, and that is off-putting when it comes into picking up series. But for a series like Eragon, which I know that I could fly through, it is probably just sheer laziness that means I've not picked it up, and I really have no excuse because now I own them all. I have literally started a reread of them this year.
So I've put them on my Christmas list, and I'm going to get these gorgeous new covers.
To get it together,
and
basically.
Then I am going to read them. And then the final series is a young adult dystopian series, and that is the Divergent trilogy. We have Divergent, Insurgent and Allegiant, and I have only read book 1. I remember kind of not really being into YA fiction, and then the Hunger Games and the Divergent trilogies came out, and that kind of threw me back onto the YA scene, obviously because I was an adult reading them. And I read the Hunger Games and adored it, and I read Divergent and adored it. For some reason, although I own Insurgent and I don't own the third one, I've never actually got around to picking them up, and I don't know why, particularly because I won't let anybody in this family watch the films until I've read the books. I'm kind of keeping everybody hostage over the films as well.
So I still haven't finished this series. I read the first 2, James has read them all, and he was kind of like, it's okay, but it's not the Hunger Games, you know, I don't think that you'll love it. But interestingly, actually, I watched the films when I had my teeth out, when I had my wisdom teeth out, and I was bedbound for quite a few days, and I just thought I need something that I could just watch but not really have to focus on, so I binge watched the films. I thought I'm probably never going to read the books. I feel like if I was going to go out and buy a book, I probably wouldn't go and buy out a third book in a series that I clearly have very little interest in reading. But it's funny that at this point I clearly thought that I really wanted to read the series because I really enjoyed it, but I just thought the films were rubbish. I thought the way that the book ended was a little bit rubbish, and since having spoken to James and kind of he's done a spoilery chat with me about what happens, I'm kind of glad that I didn't finish the series because I just don't think that it lived up to the hype. So there's definitely one that I'm happy that to just kind of move away from and never need to pick up or complete.
So if you aren't familiar with the story, it's a YA dystopian. I think it's based in Chicago or somewhere like that. And basically the world is split into 5 factions, which each kind of represent a different virtue. And on a child's 16th birthday, they can either choose to stay in the faction that they were raised in, so stay with their family, or they can choose to go to another faction which a series of tests has determined is the best faction for them. If they don't conform, then they kind of get cast out and don't fit in anywhere. So the protagonist is Tris.
Just frown.
Is it a series of tests?
The time.
I feel like that I might actually just have made that up.
Time.
Do they just choose where they want to go? That's how long it's been since I've read them. I'm sorry if that's the wrong story, but basically the world's split into 5 factions. They can choose which faction they go to, and so Tris chooses to go to the fighting faction.
I don't think much has changed in terms of me giving really botched, terrible synopsis for books. It's my major weakness, remembering exactly what a book is about and then being able to summarise it properly.
But she struggles to kind of fit in, and all these different things happen, and then she turns out to be a divergent, and the story just kind of unfolds from there. And it's basically again about overthrowing the existing government that is in place and allowing people to just be who they are. That was the worst synopsis of a book that I have ever given. So if it sounds even mildly interesting from the description, then go and check it out yourself, because I'm sure that the description that I've just given is full of
inaccuracies. Yes, there you go, Jess.
And inaccuracies. So there you go, they are the 6 series which I am desperate to finish but haven't yet finished, and will definitely be finishing at some point. But as you know, if you're a regular watcher of the channel, my TBR bookcase is literally rolling under the weight of all the books that I own and haven't read yet, so who knows when it will be.
It's funny to me that I say, oh, I'm desperate to read these series, and then as time's gone on, and especially with being in the book community, I've been exposed to so many other books and series that I want to read, and how I feel about the series that I've talked about in this video, my feelings have definitely changed. You know, with the Divergent books, I have absolutely no desire to finish those anymore, but the rest of them I'd kind of say yes, I do still want to finish, and I'm a little bit disappointed that of all of them, really the only one that I've read and finished is the Mortal Instruments series. The rest I've just kind of let slide, and I definitely need to address that, because some of them are absolutely fantastic, and I know they're good, and I know that I love them, and there's very little reason why I shouldn't make the effort to finish them. Let me take my headphones out. That was actually less cringy than I thought it was. I definitely think I'm a little bit more rigid in that video, and I still have no idea how to describe books. Honestly, I just waffle and waffle and waffle. But yeah, and as I said, I'm embarrassed almost that so many of those series that I said I was desperate to finish, that I just haven't bothered to finish. And for many of them, there is no good reason why. It does probably come down to, well, it probably comes down to a mixture of things. Obviously, being a mood reader has a huge impact, but many of them I could binge read and finish, apart from Game of Thrones, which, you know, is a whole thing on its own. But yeah, I really don't have a very good excuse for why I have not finished a good majority of them. And 4 years is a long time to kind of just be reading other stuff. And starting and finishing other series as well, probably in that time. So yeah, there you go. I'll hold my hands up and say that I am definitely in need of a stern talking to, and I need to get some of those series ticked off and completed. And if anything, it's given me a kick up the bum to do that. But it probably will be 2021 now, because I've kind of decided what the rest of my reading year is going to look like, and it doesn't include any of those. So there you go. Something a little bit different from me today. I hope that you enjoyed it. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know a series that is kind of your nemesis series. What is a series that you keep saying that you want to finish and then you just never manage to get round and finish? I would love to know that I'm not the only person who has a real chronic inability to finish reading a series. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give me the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, all the usual stuff. As always, thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I will see you all soon.